Hello, year fives. How are you doing? I hope you're keeping well. I've missed seeing you around. Hope you're looking after yourselves. Mr. Morrissey here with the first ever problem of the week. How exciting is that? I'm going to be doing one of these videos every week for a little while to help you keep up with your maths at home. In this first one, we're going to be looking at adding decimals. Let's get started, shall we? Have a look at this grid. How many squares are there in total? You're not allowed to count. That's an inefficient method. Good mathematicians are always looking for efficient methods to calculate things. Well, there are 10 columns and there are 10 rows. So we can find out the number of squares by doing 10 times 10, which is equal to 100. Of course, so there are 100 squares. And that's exactly why when you're finding the area of a square or a rectangle, you multiply the length by the width. It's exactly what we were doing here. Essentially, when you're finding the area of a shape, you're asking yourself how many squares of a particular size fit inside. And that's exactly why you times length by width. So we've got 100 squares. What if I shade in one of these squares? What fraction of the whole grid has been shaded? Well, we know there's 100 squares in total, 100 parts in total, and we shaded in one of those. So the fraction is 1 out of 100, 1/100th, 1/100th. And writing that as a decimal, how do we write that as a decimal? All we need to do is think about our place value system. So we know that we have ones, then a decimal point, we have tenths, and then after the tenths we have our hundredths. So let's see. How many ones do we have? None at all. Don't forget the decimal point. How many tenths do we have? No tenths. And how many hundredths? We got 100. So that's how you write it. 0.01. Why don't we shade in some more? What fraction of the whole has been shaded now? Well, I've shaded in 6 out of 100, 600ths. And how would you write that then as a decimal? 0.06, because we've got 600ths, no tenths, no ones, and we're not forgetting the decimal point. Let's carry on. I'm going to shade in a bit more. What about now? What fraction have we shaded? Well, let's see. There are 10 parts shaded out of 100 parts in total. So 10 hundredths, 10 100ths. But hang on a second. If you look, can you see that we also have 10 rows, just like this? We have 10 of these. So as well as shading in 10 hundredths, we've shaded in 1/10. So 10 hundredths is the same as 1/10. We found equivalent fractions there. How do we write that as a decimal? Well, just as well we convert it into tenths. It makes it much easier. Still got no ones. We've got 1/10 now. And no extra hundredths. They're all used up in the 1/10. Or you can think of it as 10 hundredths. Look, 10 hundredths, 10 hundredths. So two ways of thinking of it. Let's do maybe one more. Shade in a bit more. There we go. What about now? What fraction have I shaded, and how would you write that as a decimal? Let's think. Well, I've shaded 14 parts out of 100 in total. So I've shaded in 14 hundredths. But hang on a second. We've still got this 1/10 from before and an extra 4 hundredths. So we could say the 14 hundredths is equal to 1/10 plus 4 100ths. So now we're ready to write it as a decimal. How many ones do we have? None at all. But we said we had 1/10 and 4 100ths. So 14 hundredths is equal to 0.14. Again, 14 hundredths. 14 hundredths. Let's look at some addition. What if I wanted to work out 0.14 plus, what should we say? 0.48. What would that look like on our 100 grid? Well, we've got the 14 hundredths there already. We've got the 0.14 there already. Let's add on the 0.48, the 48 hundredths. Now, I think I'll add on just those 8 hundredths to begin with. And I think I'll put them here because I've got this blank here, you know, don't want to waste this. So I've added some of my hundredths. How many hundredths did I add on there? I added on 6 out of those 8 hundredths. And look, I've actually made another 10th. But I've still got 2 of those 8 hundredths, so I've put those there. I've added on the 8 hundredths, and now I've got to add on those 4 tenths. So that's 4 rows, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can see, hopefully you can see the 0.14 and you can see the 0.48. And now what we need to do is just tot it all up. So let's see what we have. Well, let's see, how many tenths do we have? We got 1 tenth, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths. We've got 6 tenths overall. No ones. 6 tenths overall. And then, there's 2 hundredths. So I've got 2 hundredths. So 0.14 plus 0.48 is equal to 0.62. What would that look like using the column addition method? Let's have a look. Line the digits up very carefully. Put the addition signs, but don't forget, don't subtract by mistake or multiply. We start by adding the hundredths digits. You always start with a smaller value digit. Why is that? Do you know why that is? It's because the higher value digits might change if you have to regroup. So let's see here, we got 4 hundredths plus 8 hundredths. Well, that's 12 hundredths. Now I'm going to write down 2 here and bring 1 over here. Why is that? Well, this is decimals. This is our decimal number system. Dec meaning 10. 10 years in a decade, for instance. So we're counting in tens. If I have 10 of something, then I have to regroup. And we hopefully know from the work we've done already that 12 hundredths is the same as 1 tenth and 2 hundredths. So 1 tenth and 2 hundredths. Now I'm going to add up the tenths. I've got 1 tenth plus 4 tenths is 5 tenths, plus the other tenth that I carried over. So that's 6 tenths altogether, which I'm going to write down here. Don't forget the decimal point, and no ones at all. So I get the same total, which is pleasing. Check my answer, it must be correct. So I hope you see the connection between the two methods, and each one helps you understand the other one, especially when it came to the regrouping. So here, I added the 8 hundredths to the 4 hundredths I had already. To do that, I added 6 first to make another tenth. This is another tenth. And then I had another 2 hundredths left over. And that's why I've got 2 hundredths here, the 2 hundredths left over. And then the extra tenth here is this row that I filled. Okay, what about here? What number do you think is represented? Let's have a look. There are no ones. Decimal point, very important. So we know that this is tenths. It's got 3 tenths, 4 hundredths, and 1 thousandth. And there's various questions you could ask. What if you had 2 more thousandths? What would the number be then? Well, everything else would be the same. There's no regrouping. We haven't made 10 thousandths. So there'd be 2 more here. I could even write them in if I wanted to. Everything else would be the same. So the number would be 0.343. I hope that all makes sense. Now it's over to you. I've got a number of problems for you to do in your own time and at your own pace. Any problems? Don't be discouraged. Think carefully, persevere, and go back and look at the examples that we went over already. 3 questions there. In the first one, there's a place value chart and some questions about it. If it's helpful, you can draw your own version. You can draw in the tokens. The second one, it says using blank 100 squares. You're asked to do that addition now. You may or may not have that at home. If you have squared paper at home, it's easy enough to make 100 square. Otherwise, it might be tricky, but you might be able to imagine it or describe it on the screen. And number 3 is just using the column method to complete those additions. It's all about place value, lining up the digits very, very carefully. Here we've got 2 problems to make you think a little bit more deeply about all of this. So in the first one, Mary's made a mistake. Can you explain it? Can you use at least 2 representations to show why she's incorrect? And then a second question there where you have to put in the correct symbol in the circle. Smaller than, greater than, or equal to. And then here we've got a nice problem. Annabelle's got some digit cards. She uses each card once to make a number sentence. What's the largest number she can make? What is the smallest? Now this reminds me of a cool video I made involving games you can play with dice, and they're easily adaptable to decimals. There are some decimal versions in the video. I'll put a link in the description below. Right, answers. In the first one, 100th more would be 0.422. Add 0.3. Got 3 more tens, so 0.712. How many thousands can I add before the 100th digit changes? Well, it's 8, of course, because 2 plus 8 is equal to 10. So 2 thousands plus 8 thousands equals 10 thousands, and 10 thousands we know is 100th. So you'd need to regroup. For number 2, I'll just give you the answers. The first one is 0.85, and the second one is 0.94. And finally, number 3, use the column method to complete the additions. Well, I hope you spotted the similarities and differences between those. The 5 changes its place value. Placement. The first one is 0.95. The second one is 0.5 or 0.50. Exactly the same. Both are equally correct. And finally, you have 0.455. And here are the answers to the problems. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. I hope I made you think a bit, and I hope you feel you got a better understanding of decimals now and how you add them. I'll see you next week for another problem of the week, and in the meantime, look after yourself. Do take care. Bye.